Ethan Blackwood was the kind of man who seemed to exist in a world separate from the ordinary, a young billionaire whose charm and arrogance were as renowned as his wealth. Every time he walked into a room, heads turned, whispers followed, and eyes lingered on the impeccable suit he wore, the expensive watch glinting on his wrist, and the air of confidence that seemed almost untouchable. He had built his fortune from tech ventures, savvy investments, and a relentless ambition that brooked no competition. But what set Ethan apart, or perhaps made him insufferable, was not just his wealth, but the way he wielded it like a weapon in social circles. To him, life was a game, and people were pieces on a chessboard, particularly women, whom he often saw as challenges to conquer rather than individuals with their own desires. Ethan's world was a glittering tapestry of luxury parties, elite galas, and private yachts, surrounded by friends who shared his obsession with status and power. These friends, wealthy in their own right, thrived on one-upmanship, cruel bets, and proving dominance over each other. They laughed at the misfortune of others, flaunted their successes, and constantly encouraged Ethan to take on more audacious challenges. In one dimly lit lounge, over glasses of aged whiskey, they teased him about his inability to resist a game. "You've never lost a bet, Ethan," one friend slurred with a smirk. "But I wonder, can you make someone truly fall for you without them knowing your intentions?" Ethan's lips curved into a confident smirk. A challenge like this was irresistible. That was how Sophia Parker entered the picture. Sophia was nothing like the women Ethan typically noticed. She was obese, undeniably kind-hearted, and fiercely independent, her life far removed from the glittering world Ethan inhabited. She ran a small bakery in her neighborhood, famous for her delicate pastries and warm hospitality, and had a tight-knit circle of friends and family who adored her for her authenticity and resilience. Her days were filled with kneading dough, decorating cakes, and sharing laughter with regular customers who had become like family. Sophia had never craved the luxury or approval of the wealthy elite. Her confidence came from within, a quiet pride in her accomplishments and her ability to brighten the lives of those around her. Ethan, true to his nature, saw the perfect opportunity for his next bet. He wagered that he could make Sophia fall in love with him, not out of genuine affection but as a game to prove his charm was invincible. The idea thrilled him, the thought of conquering someone who seemed so untouched by the world he dominated. With that, he crafted a plan, one that would allow him to approach her under false pretenses, pretending interest in her life while hiding the wager that drove his actions. And so, on a crisp morning, with the sun casting a golden glow on the streets of her small town, Ethan found himself stepping into Sophia's bakery, a casual smile on his face and intentions carefully masked, ready to begin the game that neither of them knew would change everything. The charity event was held in one of the grandest ballrooms in the city, chandeliers casting a warm glow over polished marble floors, and the murmur of the elite echoing through the space. Sophia Parker, dressed simply but elegantly in a flowing navy dress, felt slightly out of place among the designer gowns and tailored suits. She had been invited by a friend who insisted she attend, claiming it would be a fun way to meet new people, and maybe help raise awareness for the local children's hospital the gala was supporting. Sophia, ever kind-hearted and curious, had agreed, excited more for the cause than the grandeur of the event itself. Ethan Blackwood, on the other hand, moved through the crowd like a man who owned the very air around him. His tailored black tuxedo, perfectly coiffed hair, and the easy confidence in his stride drew attention wherever he went. Guests parted subtly as he passed, some whispering about his reputation as the young billionaire playboy who never lost a bet. His arrogance was palpable, a force in itself, and he wore it like a second skin. Tonight, though, he had more than socializing in mind. He was scanning the room for Sophia, already picturing the game he intended to play. When Ethan finally approached her, Sophia was arranging a display of desserts at one of the charity tables, her hands dusted lightly with powdered sugar. She looked up, and for a brief moment, Ethan found himself caught off guard. Sophia's eyes were sharp, intelligent, and unpretentious. She met his gaze directly, refusing to be intimidated by his imposing presence. "Can I help you with something, or are you just here to admire the sweets?" she asked, her tone light but edged with a subtle challenge. Ethan, used to women falling at the sound of his voice, felt an unexpected jolt of intrigue. He smiled, leaning slightly closer. "I was hoping you could tell me which of these treats is the most irresistible." "I trust your judgment." His voice carried the practiced charm that had won him countless social games, yet Sophia did not yield. Instead, she smirked, raising an eyebrow. "Well, if you're looking for the kind of advice that doesn't involve being charmed by the guy asking, I'd say this one," she said, pointing to a chocolate tart. "And I'm not responsible if you fall in love with it, or me." The banter, simple as it was, struck Ethan unexpectedly. She was witty, confident, and self-respecting, a combination that he had rarely encountered. The usual tactics of flattery and subtle intimidation seemed ineffective, and that both intrigued and frustrated him. Sophia, meanwhile, noticed his charm, the ease with which he moved and spoke, yet something about him felt off, a faint tension beneath the polished exterior that made her wary but also curious. As the evening continued, Ethan found himself drawn to Sophia's humor and poise, though he stubbornly denied it even to himself. He admired the way she interacted with others, how she held her own in a room filled with people who measured worth by wealth and status. For the first time in a long while, he felt a spark of admiration not rooted in conquest, and it unsettled him. The game had begun, but already, the rules were shifting in ways he had not anticipated. Ethan returned to his penthouse that night, the city lights sprawling beneath him like a glittering sea of opportunity, but his mind was preoccupied. His friends had already begun teasing him relentlessly about the bet, their voices echoing in his memory. "So, when do you start charming her?" one had asked, smirking over a glass of champagne. "Don't tell me you're actually hesitating. It's Sophia Parker, we all know this is just too easy." Ethan had laughed along with them, masking the tiny pang of uncertainty that had lodged itself in his chest. They didn't understand, he hadn't expected to feel this. Intrigued. The next day, he began to put his plan into action. Invitations were sent, casual yet carefully constructed, to social events that would give him opportunities to be near Sophia. A local art exhibit, a charity dinner, even a weekend garden party thrown by one of his acquaintances, each event was framed as a chance to get to know her, a gesture of friendship rather than the manipulative intent lurking beneath. Sophia accepted, seeing his attention as genuine interest, and Ethan played the part flawlessly, smiling, laughing, and offering thoughtful comments that made her feel seen. Yet every interaction was a test, a move in the game, and Ethan found himself increasingly surprised by the ease with which she captivated him. During their time together, Sophia began opening up in ways she hadn't with anyone else. She spoke about her family, her warm but sometimes overprotective parents, and her younger brother who had a habit of sneaking into the bakery at dawn to steal pastries. She confided in him about her struggles with body image, the teasing she had endured in school, and the quiet victories she celebrated every day just by being herself. She also shared dreams, expanding her bakery, learning more sophisticated pastry techniques, and one day traveling to France to study baking. Ethan had to bite back an amused laugh more than once, a reflexive response to what he initially considered quaint ambitions. But beneath the amusement, there was an undeniable admiration forming. By the end of the week, Ethan began to realize that Sophia's effect on him was far stronger than he had anticipated. He found himself thinking of her between meetings, replaying her laughter in his mind, and noticing the way she carried herself with a mix of confidence and vulnerability that was disarming. The bet, which had once seemed simple and trivial, now carried the weight of unexpected emotion. Ethan, who had always believed he could control every outcome, felt the first stirring of uncertainty, and perhaps something far more dangerous, genuine affection. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and Sophia's interactions became more frequent and natural, the carefully constructed pretense of friendship gradually transforming into something more complex. Ethan made it a point to attend the events she mentioned, often arriving early to help set up or staying late to ensure everything ran smoothly. At first, he rationalized these actions as part of the bet, a way to remain close enough to influence her emotions. But slowly, the rationale became unnecessary. He found genuine pleasure in her presence. Watching Sophia laugh as she explained her latest pastry creation, or seeing her face light up when a customer complimented her baking was a satisfaction that no amount of money or conquest had ever given him. Small gestures began to appear naturally, even if he tried to downplay them to himself. When a rude guest at one of the charity galas made an offhand comment about Sophia's appearance, Ethan's hand lightly rested on her back as he guided her away, his voice calm but firm as he dismissed the insult. Another evening, he noticed Sophia struggling to lift a heavy box of supplies for her bakery, and without a word, he stepped in to help, carrying it with ease while she offered a shy, grateful smile. These moments, seemingly insignificant, left impressions far deeper than Ethan cared to admit. Sophia, in turn, began to notice and appreciate his attention, interpreting his actions as simple kindness, unaware of the underlying motives that had first driven him. Sophia's feelings began to shift subtly. She found herself laughing more freely around him, seeking his advice on minor problems, and even teasing him in ways that mirrored his earlier attempts to charm her. She felt a warmth in his company that was entirely new, a sense of being truly understood and respected. She didn't yet know about the bet, but the connection was growing, threading itself into the fabric of her everyday thoughts. Ethan watched these developments with a mixture of pride and guilt. He knew what he was doing was wrong, yet every smile she directed at him made it harder to stay detached. The romantic tension between them became palpable, built on small, intimate moments. Stolen glances lingered a little too long across crowded rooms, playful teasing sparked laughter that drew them closer, and moments of vulnerability, like when Sophia confessed her fears about failing her bakery, elicited a protective instinct in Ethan that he struggled to ignore. One evening, while walking her home after a charity event, their hands brushed accidentally, sending an unexpected thrill through both of them. Sophia's cheeks flushed, and Ethan's heart pounded, though he quickly masked it with a casual smile. The line between pretense and genuine emotion was blurring, creating a charged atmosphere neither fully understood. Even as he wrestled with his conscience, Ethan continued the act, determined to win the bet while secretly battling the unexpected depth of his feelings. The growing connection, once just a tool, had become a living, breathing force in their lives, one that threatened to unravel the game he had so meticulously planned. Yet with every laugh, every shared secret, and every fleeting touch, Ethan realized he was no longer sure who was truly playing whom. Ethan sat in his sleek, glass-walled office late one evening, the city skyline glittering behind him, yet the lights of his empire felt dim compared to the storm brewing in his mind. For weeks, he had convinced himself that his actions toward Sophia were all part of a game, a bet meant to entertain his ego and impress his friends. But recently, he found the lines blurring, his thoughts involuntarily drifting toward her in ways that defied his careful rationalizations. He remembered the way she laughed at his awkward joke the other night, the way her eyes sparkled with genuine curiosity as she spoke about her bakery, and the quiet strength she displayed when defending herself against the casual judgments of others. Each memory chipped away at his arrogance, forcing him to confront a truth he had long denied. He was beginning to care for Sophia, not as a conquest, but as a person worthy of admiration. This realization shook him more than he expected. Ethan had never felt genuine affection for anyone. His life had been a series of calculated moves, and emotions were rarely part of the equation. The bet now seemed shallow, almost cruel in retrospect, yet he could not ignore the thrill it had initially provided. Worse, he feared admitting the truth to himself. His friends, oblivious to the transformation, continued to tease him mercilessly. "Careful, Ethan," one had said during a dinner, smirking. "Don't let her actually get under your skin. That's not how this game works." The comment, meant to provoke laughter, instead made Ethan uneasy. Their mockery stung, not because it was cruel, but because it highlighted the depth of the feelings he was beginning to hide even from himself. Sophia, unaware of the battle raging in Ethan's mind, confided in her best friend, Emma, during one of their quiet afternoon tea sessions. "I can't stop thinking about him," she admitted, her voice soft but tinged with worry. "There's something different about him. He's charming, yes, but it feels like he actually notices me, Emma. I don't know if I should trust it, but I can't help the way I feel." Emma, perceptive and fiercely protective, gave her a cautionary smile. "Just be careful, Sophia. People like him. Sometimes their interest isn't as real as it seems." Sophia nodded but could not shake the warmth in her chest whenever she thought of Ethan. Ethan's transformation accelerated the day he witnessed Sophia facing public ridicule at a small gallery event. A group of snobbish socialites whispered cruel remarks about her weight and her humble background, their laughter cutting through the room like knives. Sophia's face tightened for a moment, the hurt visible despite her attempts to maintain composure. Ethan, standing at the edge of the crowd, felt a surge of genuine compassion he had never experienced before. He wanted to shield her, to tell the world she was enough exactly as she was, and he realized that this protective impulse came not from the bet, but from something far deeper, a real, unselfish care for her. For the first time, Ethan's confidence faltered. The lines between game and reality blurred entirely, leaving him unsettled yet awakened. He could no longer deny it. Sophia had become more than a target of a wager. She was someone he respected, admired, and, terrifyingly, had begun to love. The evening air was crisp as Ethan walked Sophia home after a charity gala, the streets quiet except for the distant hum of city traffic. Their conversation had drifted from light-hearted teasing to more personal topics, and Ethan found himself unexpectedly captivated by her openness and warmth. Sophia laughed softly at one of his jokes, the sound melodic and sincere, and he felt a pull he hadn't anticipated. He stopped for a moment outside her building, caught in the vulnerability of the evening, the soft glow of the streetlights illuminating her face, the gentle breeze ruffling her hair. Without thinking, he reached for her hand, brushing his fingers against hers. Sophia looked up at him, a questioning smile on her lips. "Ethan, are you sure everything you do is just for fun?" she asked softly, her tone carrying a mix of curiosity and caution. Ethan froze, the weight of her words pressing against the carefully constructed wall he had built around his intentions. He opened his mouth to respond, but found no rehearsed answer could adequately explain the surge of feeling twisting inside him. Before he could frame a proper reply, Sophia stepped closer, her eyes searching his with an intensity that made his heart hammer in his chest. The moment was electric, charged with unspoken emotions that neither of them had fully acknowledged. He leaned in, almost instinctively, and their lips met in a spontaneous, lingering kiss. It was brief, yet it carried a depth that surprised them both. Ethan felt a rush of real, unfiltered emotion, a connection that had nothing to do with any bet or wager. His mind reeled, questioning the morality of everything he had planned, the games he had played. This kiss was honest, raw, and intoxicating, forcing him to confront feelings he had never allowed himself to feel before. Sophia pulled back slightly, searching his eyes with a perceptive gaze. "Ethan, what is this really about?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. There was a softness in her tone but also a hint of suspicion, as if she sensed that something about him was still hidden. Ethan swallowed hard, grappling with the truth that he could no longer fully hide his feelings. His heart wanted to confess, to tell her that the game had ended the moment he met her, yet his fear of losing her, of shattering the fragile trust budding between them, held him back. The tension between them hung in the air, thick and unspoken, a mixture of desire, uncertainty, and the fragile threads of emerging love. Ethan struggled to maintain the facade he had built, knowing that every lie weighed heavier on him now, and that each stolen glance and lingering touch only made the truth harder to conceal. For the first time, he realized that he was no longer playing a game he could control. He was falling, irrevocably and dangerously, in love. Sophia had been looking forward to spending a quiet Saturday afternoon at home, hoping to catch up on some baking and relax after a week of social events and long hours at the bakery. She had just returned from the local market, bags of fresh ingredients in hand, when she noticed a faint ping from her phone. At first, she thought it was another promotional message from the charity gala, but the notification was different, an unfamiliar group chat window flashing across the screen. Curiosity got the better of her, and she tapped it open, only to find a string of messages that made her stomach drop. Ethan's friends had been discussing him, as they often did, but this time their conversation was not light-hearted teasing. One message read, "Don't forget, the bet is on. Make sure she falls for him completely, this is going to be legendary." Another added, "She has no idea, poor thing. Can't wait to see Ethan pull this off." Sophia's hands trembled as she scrolled, piecing together the horrifying truth. Every shared smile, every gentle touch, every word of kindness now felt like a calculated maneuver, a cruel game designed for someone else's amusement. Her mind raced, disbelief giving way to humiliation, betrayal, and heartbreak all at once. Unable to contain her emotions, Sophia left the apartment in a blur, her thoughts a whirlwind. She stormed into the streets, the familiar sights of her neighborhood now twisted by shock and anger. How could Ethan, the man she had started to trust, the man whose presence had become a comfort, treat her like a pawn? The betrayal cut deeper than any insult or cruelty she had ever endured. It wasn't just about her weight or background, but about her very humanity being manipulated for entertainment. When Ethan realized she wasn't at the usual bakery event they had planned for that afternoon, he called her repeatedly, each unanswered ring increasing his anxiety. Finally, he tracked her down to a quiet park, only to find her sitting alone on a bench, her face buried in her hands, shoulders trembling. "Sophia," he began, voice tentative, reaching toward her. She looked up, eyes blazing with hurt and fury. "Don't," she said sharply. "Don't touch me. Don't speak. I know everything, Ethan. I know about the bet." Ethan's mind raced, words faltering as he struggled to explain. He opened his mouth to deny, to justify, but nothing sounded right. "Sophia, please, you have to understand," he started, but she cut him off. Before he could continue, the ping of a notification broke the tense silence. One of his friends, nearby and unable to resist the drama, had sent a mocking text. "Looks like your little project is unraveling. Good luck explaining this one, Blackwood." Their laughter, albeit digital, was enough to twist the knife deeper, making Ethan feel exposed, helpless, and undeniably guilty. Sophia rose abruptly, her decision clear. "I can't. I won't be part of this. I trusted you, Ethan, and you made me a joke." Her voice quivered, but her resolve was firm. She turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone, guilt and fear weighing heavily on his chest. For Ethan, the world had shifted. The game he had thought would be simple had become a nightmare of his own making. His friend's laughter echoed in his mind as he realized the depth of the hurt he had caused. Sophia, meanwhile, wrestled with her own pain. Every interaction replayed in her mind, now tainted by the knowledge of the deceit. Self-doubt crept in, even as she reminded herself of her worth. She questioned not only Ethan's intentions but also whether she had misjudged herself, whether her trust had been misplaced. The betrayal left her feeling vulnerable, humiliated, and uncertain, yet beneath the pain, a flicker of inner strength began to stir, a determination not to let someone else define her value. Ethan spent the night after Sophia's departure in his penthouse, the city below glittering in oblivious luxury, but he felt trapped in a storm of guilt and regret. For the first time, his wealth and status meant nothing. Every lavish possession, every triumph in business, every social accolade, none of it could undo the pain he had caused. He thought back to her laughter, the warmth of her smile, the sincerity in her eyes, and realized with crushing clarity that he had fallen in love with her. Not as part of a bet, not as a game, but truly, irrevocably. And he had hurt her in the process. The thought was unbearable. Determined to make amends, Ethan knew that words alone would not suffice. He began with the public acknowledgement of his wrongdoing. At the next social gathering among his elite circle, he stepped into the spotlight, his voice steady though his heart raced. "I have behaved in a way that is shameful," he admitted, eyes scanning the crowd that had once cheered his arrogance. "I manipulated someone I cared deeply about for a bet, a cruel, thoughtless wager, and I am truly sorry." The words fell like stones into the polished room, a silence following them as his friends processed the confession. Some smirked awkwardly, others murmured disbelief, but Ethan accepted the stares, the whispers, and even the mockery, letting them serve as a reminder of the consequences of his actions. Next, he turned his attention to Sophia's world, understanding that true redemption required action within her life, not just grand statements. He began small, quietly helping her family in ways that spoke to genuine concern rather than showmanship. He arranged for essential equipment she had mentioned needing for her bakery, and anonymously ensured her younger brother had access to the pastry classes he had always dreamed of attending. He offered support to her parents, helping with repairs around the bakery and lending a hand in the day-to-day challenges that Sophia had faced alone. Every gesture was measured not to impress, but to demonstrate that he had learned the value of selflessness and empathy. Even with these actions, Sophia remained cautious. When Ethan approached her at the bakery one afternoon, carrying fresh ingredients and a tentative smile, she paused, arms crossed. "Why are you here?" she asked, her tone polite but guarded. "I'm showing you that I've changed," Ethan said quietly. "I want to make amends, not just say it. I understand if you don't trust me yet." She studied him carefully, testing his sincerity in the smallest details. Whether he listened without interrupting, whether his actions matched his words, whether he remembered the things that mattered to her. Slowly, cautiously, she began to see a difference. Their interactions became a delicate dance of mistrust and tentative reconciliation. Ethan's earnestness and consistency gradually chipped away at Sophia's defenses. He no longer tried to charm or impress her. Instead, he supported, listened, and respected her space. The tension of the past lingered, but moments of laughter returned, glances lingered a fraction longer than before, and the warmth between them grew undeniable. Each day, Sophia tested him in subtle ways, gauging whether his change was genuine, and each day, Ethan met her cautious optimism with quiet patience. The dynamic shifted imperceptibly at first, from guarded mistrust to a fragile, budding understanding, and as the days passed, it became clear to both that redemption was possible, and that the foundation of something real and lasting could be rebuilt from the ruins of betrayal. Sophia spent the weeks following Ethan's betrayal in a quiet whirlwind of reflection and determination. At first, the pain of being deceived threatened to consume her. Every smile she had shared, every laugh, every moment of trust, felt tainted by the knowledge of the bet. But as she looked around her bakery, the cozy space filled with the comforting aroma of fresh bread and pastries, she realized that her life, her accomplishments, and her worth were never defined by anyone else's perception. Sophia decided that if she was going to heal, it would be on her own terms, embracing her own strength and reclaiming the confidence that had always been hers, even if temporarily shaken. Her first step toward empowerment was focusing on her personal goal, expanding her bakery. She had always dreamed of creating a space that was not just a business, but a hub for community, creativity, and joy. She began planning renovations, sourcing better quality ingredients, and experimenting with innovative recipes that reflected her personality and artistry. Each successful batch of pastries, each satisfied customer, was a reminder that her value was rooted in her skills, her dedication, and the love she poured into everything she did. She refused to let the past, Ethan's betrayal, society's harsh judgments, or anyone else's opinions, dictate her self-worth. As Sophia threw herself into her work, her reputation began to grow. Local media took notice of her innovative pastries and her warm approach to customers, praising her creativity and dedication. Friends and family, who had stood by her through the highs and lows, became witnesses to her resilience, celebrating each small victory alongside her. They marveled at the way she carried herself with grace and confidence, seeing her not only as someone who had overcome humiliation but as an example of self-respect and perseverance. Sophia's empowerment was quiet yet undeniable. She commanded admiration not through spectacle, but through authenticity. Ethan watched these developments from the sidelines, his admiration for her deepening with each passing day. He had thought love was about charm, conquest, and influence, but Sophia's unwavering determination reshaped his understanding. Her strength, independence, and refusal to be defined by anyone else, including him, showed him the true meaning of unconditional love. He realized that what he felt for her was no longer shallow or possessive. It was genuine, grounded in respect for her character, her ambitions, and her self-worth. In the midst of her personal and professional triumphs, Sophia embodied the story's most important lesson. Empowerment comes from within, self-love is the foundation of resilience, and true beauty radiates from confidence and authenticity. She had transformed pain into purpose, heartbreak into motivation, and societal judgment into fuel for her dreams. Every smile she shared with her customers, every confident step she took through her bakery, and every moment she celebrated her accomplishments reaffirmed her strength. Sophia's journey was no longer defined by Ethan's bet or anyone else's expectations. It was defined by her courage, her talent, and her unwavering belief in herself. Ethan knew that words alone could never fully convey the depth of his remorse or the sincerity of his love. If he wanted Sophia to believe in his transformation, he needed a gesture, grand, heartfelt, and impossible to ignore. He spent days planning, carefully considering what would resonate with her without seeming performative. It wasn't enough to simply apologize. He had to show her, in a tangible way, that he saw her not as a target of a game but as the remarkable, independent woman she truly was. He began by arranging a small public event, one that celebrated Sophia's accomplishments rather than his own involvement. Invitations were sent to local community members, loyal customers, and media outlets who had followed her journey. The theme was simple yet meaningful, a celebration of her bakery's success and her role as an inspiring entrepreneur in the neighborhood. The venue was decorated modestly, reflecting the warmth and charm of her own bakery, with displays of her best pastries, personalized touches, and a wall showcasing photographs of her journey. Smiling customers, moments of hard work, and snapshots of the family that had supported her along the way. When Sophia arrived, unaware of what Ethan had planned, she was taken aback. The room was filled with people who had come to honor her, and at the center stood Ethan, looking unusually vulnerable in a simple suit, his expression earnest. He stepped forward, clearing his throat as the crowd hushed. "I stand here today, not to speak of myself, but to recognize someone extraordinary," he began, his voice steady despite the nerves that fluttered in his chest. "Sophia Parker has built something remarkable, not just a bakery, but a place filled with love, warmth, and creativity. Her dedication, resilience, and kindness inspire all of us. I failed her in the worst way, and I am ashamed for treating her like a game. Today, I want to honor her, and I want her to know that I see her, not as a challenge, not as a bet, but as the incredible woman she truly is." Sophia felt a lump form in her throat, emotions swirling between disbelief, admiration, and cautious hope. The public acknowledgement of her character, paired with the tangible celebration of her achievements, struck her deeply. She could see the sincerity in Ethan's eyes, the truth in his words, and yet a flicker of caution remained. Her trust had been fractured, and while she was moved, she could not ignore the past. As the event continued, Ethan unveiled the symbolic centerpiece, a plaque with her bakery's name and motto, accompanied by a framed timeline of her journey from a small local baker to a respected entrepreneur. It was a gesture that encapsulated everything he had learned about her, her hard work, her dreams, and the essence of who she was. He stepped back, letting the crowd celebrate her while he remained quietly in the corner, watching her reaction, hoping she would see the transformation in him mirrored in the respect he showed her. The room buzzed with admiration and applause, yet the emotional tension between them was palpable. Sophia's eyes met Ethan's, a mixture of caution, vulnerability, and tentative warmth reflecting back at him. The grand gesture had opened a door, and now the question remained whether she would step through it, allowing herself to believe in the man he had become. The evening was quiet, a soft breeze rustling the leaves outside Sophia's bakery. Inside, the warm glow of the lamps cast gentle shadows, creating a cocoon of privacy where nothing and no one could interrupt them. Ethan stood near the doorway, nervous but determined, his hands clasped loosely in front of him. Sophia, seated at the table where she often sampled new recipes, looked at him with a mixture of wariness and curiosity. The air between them was heavy with unspoken words, past pain, and tentative hope. "I wanted to come here, just the two of us," Ethan began, his voice low but steady. "There's something I need to say, something I should have said a long time ago." He paused, searching her eyes for a sign of receptiveness. Sophia remained silent, arms crossed lightly, a protective barrier that told him she was listening but not yet forgiving. Taking a deep breath, he continued. "I was wrong, Sophia. The bet, it was cruel, thoughtless, and completely disrespectful to you. I manipulated your feelings, and there is no excuse for that. I hurt you, and I am truly sorry." Sophia's chest tightened, memories of betrayal and humiliation flashing through her mind. She had spent countless nights questioning herself, her worth, and whether she had misjudged Ethan entirely. "It wasn't just a bet to me, Ethan," she said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. "It wasn't just a game I got caught up in. You made me believe, you made me trust you. And that trust—" She broke off, swallowing hard. "It shattered." Her eyes glistened, reflecting both the hurt and the courage it had taken to face him. Ethan nodded, feeling the full weight of her words. "I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me immediately. I want to be honest with you, completely. The game ended the moment I realized how incredible you are, not as a challenge but as the person you truly are. Every laugh, every story you shared, every moment I spent with you, it changed me. I care about you, Sophia. Truly, more than I've ever cared about anyone. There was a pause, a moment suspended in time. Sophia studied him carefully, searching for any trace of deceit. Slowly, she allowed herself to soften, the walls around her heart cracking just enough to let a flicker of hope Indiana. I see that, Ethan. And I can feel that things have changed. But it's not easy. Trust doesn't rebuild itself overnight. Her words were firm, yet there was an unmistakable warmth in her tone. He stepped closer, careful to respect her space, and gently took her hand. The simple touch conveyed more than words could, an apology, a promise, and a recognition of the bond they had begun to rebuild. I know, he said softly. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'll be patient, and I'll prove to you every day that I mean this. Every word, every action. Sophia gave a small, tentative smile, a signal that while the road ahead would be gradual, reconciliation was possible. Their eyes met, filled with unspoken understanding, and for the first time in weeks, the tension between them felt hopeful rather than painful. The emotional intimacy they shared went beyond any physical attraction. It was rooted in honesty, vulnerability, and the slow rebuilding of trust. And in that quiet bakery, with a soft light surrounding them, the first fragile threads of their renewed connection began to weave a stronger, deeper bond. Months after their reconciliation, Ethan and Sophia's relationship had transformed into something genuine, built on mutual respect, trust, and love. Gone were the games, the bets, and the arrogance that had once threatened to tear them apart. Instead, there was laughter, shared dreams, and quiet moments of understanding that deepened their connection each day. Ethan admired Sophia not only for her strength and independence but also for the warmth and compassion she extended to everyone around her. Sophia, in turn, appreciated Ethan's honesty, patience, and the way he had worked tirelessly to show he could love without ego or pretense. Their bond had grown beyond appearances and superficial charm. It was rooted in the authenticity of their hearts. Friends and family who had once witnessed Sophia's hesitation now saw the flourishing of a partnership that defied expectations. Ethan's social circle, initially skeptical and even mocking of the idea that he could genuinely care for someone like Sophia, now observed a remarkable change. He no longer sought validation through manipulation or status. Instead, he listened, supported, and celebrated the people in his life with humility. Sophia's friends, including her closest confidant Emma, marveled at her renewed confidence. She moved with a self-assured grace, her laughter light and genuine, a reflection of someone who had reclaimed her worth and chosen love on her own terms. One particularly memorable day symbolized the full circle of their journey. Sophia had long dreamed of expanding her bakery, and with Ethan's support, not as a replacement of her independence, but as a true partner, she opened a new branch in a bustling part of town. The grand opening was filled with friends, family, and loyal customers, all eager to celebrate her accomplishment. Ethan stood beside her, offering encouragement and helping in practical ways, yet allowing Sophia to shine as the star of the event. When she cut the ribbon, the crowd cheered, and Ethan felt a swell of pride, not for himself, but for the woman he loved and admired, who had achieved this milestone through her determination and talent. In the quiet moments that followed, Sophia and Ethan shared a smile, their hands intertwined as they watched the bustling activity around them. The journey that had begun with deceit and arrogance had evolved into a partnership based on equality, trust, and mutual respect. Every glance, every shared joke, every supportive gesture was a testament to how far they had come. They had learned that love was not about appearances, manipulation, or societal approval, but about seeing and valuing the other person wholly and authentically. As the sun set over the city, casting a golden glow across the bakery's new facade, Ethan and Sophia stood side by side, hearts full and spirits light. The world around them felt brighter, warmer, and more promising. Their story was no longer about a bet or a challenge. It was about triumph, growth, and the power of genuine love. In each other, they had found not just romance, but a partnership grounded in respect, self-worth, and the understanding that true connection transcends appearances. Together, they stepped forward, ready to embrace whatever came next, their love a beacon of hope, authenticity, and enduring happiness.